Thank you everyone for coming to this morning-ish session, especially if you partook in the festivities last night. I appreciate your alertness. We're going to be talking about translating Drupal into English with prompts, but mostly we're going to be talking about empathy and communication and connecting with people. My name is Lily. A few things to know about me. Personally, I work in tech but have a lot of anti-tech tendencies outside of it, so really lean into connection and how we can build this real human connection, especially when we have tools that allow us to collaborate and be part of teams in different places, like my dispersed team. I worked many years in nonprofits, marketing, fundraising, and transitioned into working in Drupal agencies about 3.5 years ago. And because of my role as a project account manager, I kind of sit on the edge of the people with the technical expertise and play that role of translator quite a bit. I work at an agency called Calamuna. We help mission-driven organizations align their strategy, design, and obviously development, the code on their websites, align all of that with their mission and make sure that all of the tools that they're using really best serve them. What are we going to talk about today? Moving the cursor out of the way so that it doesn't bother me. Okay, first, context. So I think it's always important to start with the why. Why are we here? Why are we talking about all of this? I know you all came with your whys of why you chose this session over the competing sessions at this time slot, but I think it helps if we all start with the same why. And then we'll move on to empathy. So spoiler alert, empathy is the foundation of strong communication. I'm sure you've heard that, but we're not going to talk about why empathy is so great. We're going to talk about how to build it and how to continue to iterate how you build it. And then we'll talk about building a dictionary, right? The basis of translation. How do you sort of do the basics of teaching people the jargon? And then we'll move on to kind of the advanced course. I think the most fun part, the analogies and sort of building more complex connections to build your dictionary and to build mutual understanding with people. So, step one, context. I used to work at a French language and cultural center. I was their marketing and fundraising manager. That was my last job I had before moving into agencies. And can someone guess who you might find in a French language and cultural center? Just call it out. French people, sure. French people who are working as French teachers, a lot of them. So in this French school, everyone was a native French speaker. And so even though it wasn't my job to work in French, because I was surrounded by French teachers, they just sat and patiently worked with me while I was able to do some of the facets of my job in French. And so I had this experience of sort of being on the edge of this language that I didn't speak fluently, but with people whose job it was and who kind of had this personality type of, I'm here to help you, I'm here, I love explaining what bonjour means over and over and over again, which drew them to being French teachers. And then I started working in an agency, and I was surrounded by developers. And what do you think developers have in common?
Language. They speak in code.
So I think, at least if you're a developer, so I'm not a developer, if you're a developer, correct me, but I think what developers have in common if they like their jobs is that they like to solve complex problems and mostly feel left alone so that they can dig in and solve those complex problems. The personality traits that drive you to enjoy being a developer and thrive as a developer are not the same personality traits that would lead you to thrive as being a French teacher necessarily. And I experienced this firsthand when I first started, weeks after being around these French teachers, and a developer at my agency said, I can't believe that client doesn't know what a field is. And I thought, field, right? I know what a field is. You plant food there, maybe there's some grass there. And thank goodness I wasn't embarrassed enough to not say it, but that was my truth. I don't know what a field is, and so I'm sure our clients feel the same way. And so I felt this sort of opening of maybe there's a space here for me to sort of use my experience in people translating and sort of teaching people new language and kind of hone that skill and make that part of what I do in my work. So I'm not the only one to think this or to say this, but I think we as technical people have a miscommunication problem, and it spans across a lot of different types of groups of people. And the way I'm going to prove this to you is with a game of Guess Who. So who is this prototypical person? You deliver a feature, and they say, I thought you were building this other feature. That's what I thought that's what I expected to see on the site. Who is that? They're not part of your team, they're part of the client, right? We're great at delivering whatever you need, and we can definitely do it within your budget. Sales. I haven't confirmed, but I'm sure the developers can easily build my design. That's why I've already shown them to the clients. So this is maybe less technical designer, but we have these people in our organization, like me, less technical colleagues. So we know this, right? We have a miscommunication problem with clients and sales and non-technical colleagues, and it's sort of ongoing and pervasive. And that experience I had of, I can't believe they don't know what a field is I think something that happens in the context of people who are really fluent in Drupal often. So how do we solve it? We build empathy. I'm going to talk about this really briefly because I know that you already know that empathy is important. But just to say it again, why empathy? Effective communication is essential, right? We know that. And communication is the foundation of how we develop relationships with each other and our clients, and communication, how we share who we are, how we understand who other people are. And communication is founded on empathy. And so that's a whole different session. Empathy is important. I think often people come to conferences and they say, empathy is important. Okay, bye, and don't really tell you how to build it, and I think even more importantly, how to iterate it. So whether you see yourself as an empathetic person or not, it's a skill to be honed. It's a muscle to be strengthened in the same way that you don't win yoga, you practice yoga. People who go to the gym don't just say, I'm muscly enough and stop going to the gym. So how do you do it? How do you build empathy? I have a couple ideas. So idea one is get out of your comfort zone. Especially when thinking about building empathy for your sales team, clients, or non-technical colleagues who are coming in and not necessarily in their comfort zone in this jargon and in this space we're in, you can get out of your comfort zone and feel that same feeling that they're feeling. So there's some fun ways to do that. Maybe you could go to a meetup of a community that you're not a part of. And so I live in Denver, and I just searched meetups in Denver that people might find uncomfortable or not part of their community. And so I found this very Colorado contemporary dance and breath work. So you can do contact improvisation, which is kind of like a movement dance where you kind of roll on people on the floor, and you can do this breath work. Maybe that's something that would get you out of your comfort zone, and you would feel that feeling of they have this vocabulary of how to move together, and I don't have that. Or you might go to this project management roundtable, which sounds like what I do, except you look at the speakers and they build mines and oil and gas things. And so the second I walk in there, I'm sure it's just going to be over my head. The other thing you might do, if you have the joy of meeting my partner, who's an electrical engineer who designs substations, you might ask him about his day. And I did. I said, you're in this jargon-filled space. Tell me about a prototypical day that people in your industry would understand. And he said this. I did a quick cat bank sizing calculation to determine the kVAR rating of the cat bank required for the voltage support on a 230 kV line. I guarantee you that's what your workday sounds like to people, especially if you write code. And I thought, I'll just translate it into English on the other side of the slide. And the reason why I highlighted that first sentence is that's as far as we got, and I filled the slide. So ask them, what did you do? Okay, what do you mean by that? Let's start cat bank. What the heck is a cat bank? Oh, easy, it's a grouping of capacitors. Does anyone know what a capacitor is? No. Oh, we got one in the room. Okay, what's a capacitor? That was my next question. Okay, it's a device that provides capacitance. Great. Which in this case is imaginary power that raises the voltage. All right, and so we're moving through our sentence. A kVAR is a type of rating, like a watt. It's important for the system. And voltage support on a tube. The whole reason why we're doing this is that the voltage is too low, so we're raising it with this grouping of capacitors that provides imaginary power to the system, right? And I've gotten to the point where I just say, good day, bad day, But you all know people in your life that live, maybe medical professionals, people who have jargon-filled days. Hearing that will help you build empathy with people as they step into our jargon-filled days. So other ways to build empathy. Now that you've built this sort of feeling of discomfort, now you can use your imagination to step into that feeling of discomfort. And since I referenced shoes, this is just kind of silly, but kind of, relevant. Going to my best friend's wedding. So if you've ever been a part of a bridal party, if you're a woman, you might have had my experience where you sit in a hotel room all day while everyone does their hair and their makeup, and you're trapped. And if the wedding is in Los Angeles, like this one was, the men went to the beach, right? And they spent 10 minutes putting on suits, and there he was, standing at the end of the aisle. And so it doesn't take him putting on a heavy dress and uncomfortable shoes to feel at what she's feeling as she walks down the aisle, right? Everyone's looking at her. She's not wearing the most comfortable things. You know, we can imagine other people's experience without having it. But we've also had this experience, I think, this feeling of feeling like an outsider in this technical space. So, prove it. Tell me if you have ever felt frustrated understanding something about Drupal. I don't know if that's, unless you're someone who doesn't get frustrated easily, it's probably everyone, right? So it's easy to put yourself in that experience. Or if you learned about Drupal after age 25, I know I did. It's not something that everyone necessarily goes to school with or learns young. And so you had the experience of being an adult not knowing this thing and then knowing that thing. And so putting yourself back in that space is a really great place to come from, building a foundation of empathy-based communication. And so one last thing, and I think that this is important, especially as we live in this agile, iterative world, you seek feedback, right? Because you've aimed to build this really great communication with your clients and your sales team and your non-technical colleagues. You can ask them, hey, how am I doing communicating with you? What jargon am I using? What do you not understand about what I'm saying? Am I speaking above your level or below your level of understanding? What can I do to help you understand more? And the more questions that you ask, the more that you can kind of hone your skills in this arena. And so that's great. We built some empathy, and now we're going to actually talk to people, which is important in communication. So shared language, right, is the foundation of understanding. You don't understand people when you don't speak the same language. Does anyone speak French, by the way? Got a couple Canadians in the room. So, si je parle en français, pas d'anglais, désolé, mon français c'est pas parfait, mais c'est difficile pour tout le monde de comprendre, oui. Like, sorry about my mangled French as part of what I said, but I could give this session in French. The French-speaking people would roll their eyes a little bit at my grammar, but if I gave what I said was if I gave the whole session in French, not everyone would understand. And imagine that. Think about that when you're thinking about a view and a content type and a field and all of these words that we think are English are not. And just speaking to people like that is the same thing as going in and speaking to them in French. So we have to build a shared language. In the same way that you learn a new language and you say, l'amour, that is love, right? Back to back, we have a basis of understanding based on things that we already know. And you start there by listening thoughtfully. And I'm talking a lot about talking in this session, but I want to give a real space for listening to breathe, because there's a lot of building mutual understanding that happens in the space between your words. I called it active listening, but then I looked at what active listening really means, and so some of this is active listening, some of it isn't, so I'm just going to call it thoughtful listening. You listen rather than waiting to talk, and it's so hard to do, and I found myself doing it. I think we're all guilty of it. Someone's talking, and you think, oh, that story's so interesting, it reminds me of this time that this thing happened, and then you're just waiting for them to stop talking so that you can tell your story, that they expect you. And so a great way to stop that is when you think of yourself planning to speak, just say, I'm going to let it go. I don't care if what I end up saying is not as good as that thing, or I don't have something to say right away. It's more important for me to hear these people. Or you can write down what you want to say, just a note about it, and then when you finish their thought, you can add that in. Rephrase what they said. So often I find, and this is just, in work and life, that I feel like I understand what someone said, or they think that they communicated clearly and they didn't. Oh, we can go wherever you want for dinner. Really, anywhere I want to go. Okay, well, I don't really want Mexican, right? I don't really want to drive far away. Oh, okay, so you want anywhere I want to go except no Mexican close to the house. Well, and then you start to refine what people actually mean and if you're actually hearing them. In that same regard, ask questions. So kind of what I just modeled, but the more questions that you ask, the more you can really hone what people are communicating so that you can hear them. And then I think it's so important to pay attention to nonverbal cues and to advocate for nonverbal cues. So we work remotely. I'm pretty insistent that people's videos are on. I don't understand how you can build empathy and build rapport when 94-ish% of people's communication is absent from your view. So if you don't have a video conferencing tool, I really, really recommend something like that. So this is an example. It wasn't on our website, but it was a client's website. And I think this happens a lot, right? Like, see this button here? I want that available on other pages of my site. Has anyone ever mistranslated something a client asked for? Wrote a ticket, had a developer do it? Wasn't the right thing? Got a couple? So it's easy to do that, right? Okay, you want this. I write a ticket, developer says, okay, well, it's a blue button available everywhere, done. But if you ask the right questions, you can say, okay, what I'm hearing is you want this dark blue button with the arrow on it available on every page of your site. And suddenly the client says, oh, I want that shape, but I want it in white with a blue outline. And I want it in my light blue and my dark blue, and I want the arrow to be, as you start to ask questions, you find out what exactly they want. Okay, great, you want, and then to find all their requirements, then you say everywhere on your site, including the About Us page, the portfolio, the careers. Oh, no, we'll never use it on the careers page. And so then you're refining their asks, so you're building exactly what they want in the most efficient way because you're communicating with them and speaking it in their language and not saying, oh, is it going to be placed in a block view or content view, and it's more like this is how it's going to function for you. How do you want it to be easier, or do you want it to be more customizable? So just a simple example, but using those tools to communicate whenever it matters. Continuing our shared language building with a Drupal to English dictionary. So just like I said, French-English dictionary, I recommend you build for yourself your Drupal to English dictionary. And it doesn't have to be mine, and it's really based on basic analogies. So things like a wireframe is a blueprint. That makes sense to me. I know how to explain that. I don't need to fully understand what a wireframe is or isn't. I don't need to know how to build a wireframe in order to explain what a wireframe is, at least to the point of that mutual understanding. A field, I friend the field, I call an input. You're filling out a questionnaire or something, and you have these spots where you add something. So you put an image there, maybe you put some text there. That's a field. Taxonomy is vocabulary, and you don't even have to explain that. You can just say, we're building out your taxonomies, your site vocabularies, and done. Moving on, simplifying. A lot of components, paragraphs, I call them puzzle pieces. So we have these choose your own adventure types of pages where you can puzzle piece whatever you want, and we design them in this elegant way where they all look great no matter which way you do it. But it's not always a great experience for your users to look at every news page and they're all super different looking from one another. They want every news page to look the same. And so we also build you these templates, right? These curated templates, content types, so that you can make all of those pages look the same, and it takes the guesswork and the time out of it for you. So in the real world, I don't know, I looked for free images of wireframes in this beautiful, wireframe of, I don't know, we don't necessarily watercolor our wireframes. Well, let's say we were presenting a wireframe. And so you're there with the client, and often we'll say something like, okay, it's time to, do you approve the wireframe? Do you have any feedback on the wireframe? And we forget, clients don't really know what a wireframe is necessarily. They don't know what it means to approve a wireframe. They don't know why we're doing it. They don't remember where we are in the process. I do a lot of things with contextualizing these types of decisions. So this is a wireframe. It's like a blueprint for your site. So instead of bringing in all the furniture and talking about what couch we're going to have, it doesn't matter if we built the living room on the total opposite side of the house that we need to. If your couch is nice but you don't have the light-facing windows or whatever you're after, it doesn't matter. So we take away all those distractions, and really what we're figuring out is the structure of this page. So not the size of the sidebar, but will there be a sidebar? Not the color of the banner, but are we going to have a banner on these types of pages? And so we're really focusing on the structure so that we're not distracted, and because it's more efficient for us to move things around when we haven't spent a lot of time making them look as pretty. And so approving a wireframe means that you're approving the structure. And then we're going to layer visual design on top of it. And so you've probably heard something like that before, but just always having that dictionary definition in your pocket. Wireframe is blueprint. Have your little analogy. It makes it really easy, and you can really hone it from client to client. And like I said, seek feedback and iterate as you go. So now we're to the fun part with props, building connections. So I love analogies. Analogies, I use them all the time, even when I don't think I'm using them, and so do you. You know, when you're explaining something to someone, often it's like you're pulling an analogy out of your pocket. And they're a shortcut to mutual understanding. So like I said, I can say a wireframe is a blueprint without fully understanding what a wireframe is or isn't, without being able to build one. It makes it really easy for me to explain and for you to understand. Here's an example of mother, right? I have a mother. That's her. You have a mother too, I'm sure. Hopefully your mother has these qualities about her, right? She's nurturing. She's protective. And so you have that feeling of what a mother is, and then you can take that away to another space. Like that mother. And so I don't know her experience. I don't know, what an average day in that bear's life is like. But I know what a mother is, and so we get it, right? Mama bear. And we expand that understanding that we already have out into the world, and then into these kind of more conceptual concepts: Mother Earth, nurturing, home, protective. And other people use analogies too. It's funny, I found this quote attributed to Albert Einstein, and then the internet disputes whether he actually said it. So someone who might be Albert Einstein might have said, a wire telegraph is kind of like a very, very long cat. You pull his tail in New York and his head is meowing in Los Angeles. Radio is just like that. When you send signals here, they receive them there. There's just no cat. How do you explain radio to someone who doesn't understand how radio works? So again, like we talked about empathy is important briefly, and really how to build it for the bulk of the session. This section of the session is really about how to build an effective analogy, because me telling you they're great and sending you off on your way is really much less valuable content than empowering you to create them in your life. So I've created a framework around building an effective analogy really fast and simple and fun. I think fun is an important part. So you ask yourself 2 questions to do this. What is the essence of what I need to communicate? Not the everything, not the 100% truth, the essence. And then, because we're building an analogy, then we ask ourselves, what else is similar? So we'll start with an example of explaining something that I think everyone but one person in the room doesn't know how it works. Oh, sorry, I forgot about this slide. So I think it's important that these questions aren't part of your calculation. It doesn't have to be 100% true. It doesn't have to be fully understood by you. It's just enough to expand that understanding from you to the other person. So, does anyone know what that is? It's a substation. So what is a substation, right? My partner builds these all the time. That's what he does. He designs them. He's an architect of substations, and so I hear way more about this than I care to hear, and maybe you will in the next 5 minutes hear more about it than you care to hear. I'm using it as an example again because it's jargon. It's something technical that's in an industry that isn't ours. So what is the essence of a substation? I'm going to help you with this because you don't necessarily know what a substation is already. So it is part of the power grid. Easy. It does 1 or 2 things. It either changes the voltage of power, or it collects or distributes power. Easy enough. The problem with knowing too much about something, like what is a content management system, then you want to go on and on and on and on and on and on and on, but think about what is the essence and really hone it. And then you consider, okay, what else is similar? It's part of a system, changes something, move something. So I'm thinking about maybe a laptop power supply, those like laptop block things. I don't really understand how they work, but I know that they change something about the power to make it safe for your computer, which is why you don't just plug your computer into the wall the same way that other things without some sort of thing like that. And you see this isn't a great what else is similar, because I struggle to even understand what it is, so we'll hone it down a little bit. A highway on-ramp. So traffic is slow, and then it counters this thing, and it triggers everybody to move fast, which I like, but it's still not quite there. And so I'm thinking traffic, cars. What about a traffic light, right? A traffic light is part of this system, of this grid that communicates to these things to go slow and fast, and it regulates them. Sometimes it speeds them up, and sometimes it slows them back down again. And so now what I can say to you, instead of going through all the things, substation this, that, it makes, they make it so that when birds hit it, it's okay. You make sure you don't electrocute yourself when you walk up to it. There's all the things that go into building it that are way beyond my understanding. I can just say to you, a substation is like a traffic light. It changes the power the same way that a traffic light changes cars and traffic. So this is the moment that really, I'll take questions at the end if that's okay. This is the moment that really inspired this whole session. And this isn't a picture of her, but I had a junior account coordinator working under me, and she was brand new, and I had her send out a series of emails for me. And there was a Drupal core update, and so I sent her a spreadsheet. Drupal core update happened. Can you let all these clients know that their core update happened? And on the spreadsheet it said these clients are on our Acquia clients. And so she sent them an email that said, hello, your Acquia core update is complete. Let us know if you have any questions. Thank you. And again, I'm on the edge of the tech, but to me that communicates a little bit of we don't know what we're talking about, because clients who know that it wasn't their Acquia that got updated, it was their Drupal that got updated, and Acquia and Drupal are different things. And so I can't fault her, right? We have a miscommunication problem. It was on me to not have communicated at that point what the difference is between Drupal and Acquia. So, what is the difference between Drupal and Acquia? What is the essence? What is Drupal, right? We could talk for weeks about this. Here we are talking for long periods of time about this, but the essence of what Drupal is, to me, it's a content management system. It lets people who aren't developers update content on their site, like pictures and text and things like that. What's Acquia? Again, a complex question. Go talk to the Acquia booth. I'm sure they'll tell you all sorts of things about it. But to me, in this context, Acquia is the hosting provider. So they put that website somewhere so that people can access it, and it's not just sitting on the computer of the developer who built it, which isn't very useful for the company. So, all right, we have this content management system, we have this hosting provider. What else is similar? So I started to think about it, thinking about maybe a candy bar and a vending machine. So we have this candy bar that provides this experience of sustenance, and then we have this vending machine that distributes it to people, it allows people to access it. It's okay, right? We're on our way. I don't know why I was hungry or something when I was putting this deck together, but now I'm thinking maybe like a baking mix in a grocery store shelf. Because a baking mix lets you bake a cake even if you're not a baker, just like Drupal allows you to change your website even when you're not a coder. And the shelf is a distribute that allows you to access that baking mix. And I think that's all right. And I actually like that one quite a lot, but I didn't have baking mix with me in the room at the time, and so what I turned to was my laptop and my desk, right? So what I told her was, telling our clients that we did an Acquia core update is like IT coming to your big organization and saying, I did a desk software update for you. And you think, a desk software? Like even those sit-stand desks don't have software, I don't think. And so you ask questions, right? A desk software, yeah, that metal thing on your desk, I updated its software. Oh, you did a computer software update for me. So just a really simple way to explain it. She doesn't even have to know what a content management system is to kind of get the difference between a desk and a laptop. A release plan, right? Same conversation, same non-technical member of my team. Why are we doing a release? I've had this conversation with clients a lot, right? Feature A is done, and I don't want to wait for feature B to be done and for us to release it on Monday because I want feature A right now. Why do we have to bucket these features together and do them into a release? It's a great question, right? We better have a good answer. So to me, a release is a grouping of tasks to be completed and then delivered on this feature scheduled date. It allows for efficiency of testing and ease in development. I don't have to know why it's hard to pull a feature out of this feature A didn't pass, and so we have to pull it out of the release, and that's difficult sometimes and not sometimes. I'm not a developer. I don't really have to know why to sort of have that basis. And then I'm thinking, okay, what's similar? We have this thing, we group them together, we do it at the same time, we're more efficient that way. I'm brainstorming about it a little bit. Groceries in a bag.
road trip.
A car for a road trip, right?
Yeah.
School bus.
A school bus. There's all sorts of things, right? I'm thinking like we could go to the grocery store and buy an item and check out and take it to the car. And item A would get to the car faster, right? We bought our shampoo, we're at the car. Oh, I also needed oranges. So go and you buy your oranges, you get to the car. Each thing is getting there faster than it would have otherwise, but it's taking me a huge amount longer to go to the grocery store than it would be if I just bought everything, checked out at one time and left. Maybe on our way. I got to a yoga class when I was preparing this session, and I had this moment where, okay, everyone moves to their own breath, and then we're going to meet together here before we move on. And it's so that we can realign and then move together, because otherwise it would just descend into madness and chaos if everyone just kept going on their own. Everyone would be somewhere else, and we couldn't be guided together. So it's a niche example. Like, you want something that's more wide and accessible than that. And so I thought, because I was in the room with her, dry erase markers in a cup, and because I forgot to bring dry erase markers, and one of the members of our team went to the farmer's market this morning, and sort of oranges across the room, right? It's easiest to do. I want to take these oranges across the room. So I'm going to take the first one, and we'll bring it across the room, and set it down, right? The second one, put it right. But if I had a bowl where I could just take all of the oranges across the room, like, that's what it is. A release is like a bowl. And so you make it really simple, you communicate the essence, and then suddenly we're on the same level and we're speaking the same language. So I thought we would do an example together. I couldn't find a good example for SSO, which is the game we're going to play. So I thought a lot of SSOs relate to Google, and there's a free image somewhere of someone making Google out of M&Ms, so I figured why not. So what is an SSO? I've explained that a lot. It's complicated, it's already an acronym, right? What is the essence? And you can feel free to raise your hand or just shout it out. Yeah. Log into one place and be logged in everywhere.
Ticket to get in.
It's what?
A ticket to get in.
A ticket to get in.
Entry ticket.
Well, I guess so. Entry ticket. To me, we're moving more into the what else is similar space. But
That is, you want to get in the theater, but you have to go to the ticket booth and get a token and bring it to the.
yeah, no, I get that. We're gonna align on the essence, and then we'll move into the similarities. So, any other thoughts on the essence? Yeah.
Your identity.
It's your identity. Ooh.
It's authentication.
Authentication. Maybe thoughts on this, so what else is similar? We got ticket. Ticket's good, but ticket gets you into one. Usually, I got the movie theater ticket, and then I go to my one movie. I guess once you're in, you're in. You can go to all the movies.
Passport. Keep on.
Well, usually if you go to different movies, you have to go back to the ticket booth and get another ticket. So
That is-
different websites, you have to go back to the ticket booth.
Oh, okay.
But SSO is like one ticket that works in all theaters.
A conference pass.
It's a card.
Oh, clicker card.
Conference pass.
Oh.
Different rooms, but
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have some good ideas, right? We have good tickets, and I think even that element of sort of, you have to get a different ticket to go to different places betrays a little bit of the fact that you're a back-end developer and you understand how SSOs work. Because to me, that is sort of, I didn't know that you had to get a different ticket from
Oh,
different.
it depends
So-
on the architecture.
And it depends on, this is a good point to make too, it depends on what is the essence for them. So if you're explaining to someone who is taking on building an SSO for the first time, your explanation of what an SSO is different than your, high-level stakeholder who just needs to approve the extra budget to do the SSO. Like, why are we doing this kind of thing? So keep in mind that the essence is going to shift over time, and similarities will too. So if your client travels a lot, Passport's a great option. If you're at a conference and you have your badge, props make it even more fun, I think. And so you can use the prop that you have. And so it varies and changes a bit. So, in summary, effective communication is essential. It's not something that we can squeeze in on the side. It's the foundation of everything that we do. And I think that when a miscommunication happens, it's always the responsibility of the person with more knowledge to rectify that miscommunication. Effective communication starts with empathy, being where they are, putting yourself in their shoes, asking them questions, understanding their world, and continuing to refine and hone your capacity to understand other people's worlds. Shared language is the foundation of understanding. When you see someone's eyes glaze over because you start talking to them in Drupal, imagine that you started talking to them in French because you really just did that same thing. So make sure that you put a lot of effort and thought toward building and maintaining that shared understanding. And analogies are fun and easy and efficient shortcuts to building that mutual understanding without explaining exactly how something works. You just need to get the basic essence down to someone. And that's what you do. You build a great analogy by defining the essence and then expanding your vision out and considering the similarities. So we have a little bit of time for question and discussion if people are interested. Also, I'm around at Bad Camp. I live in lovely Denver, Colorado, generally. And I'm available on LinkedIn and email to keep the conversation going. So thank you. Any questions or thoughts? Yeah.
How do you, empathy is such a difficult thing to do. It's sometimes against human nature, especially with tech-minded people, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to recognize in an area that in the agency I've struggled with is if you need a team to build empathy. I can build empathy all I want, but if the team doesn't have empathy for the client, because many times the client doesn't have any empathy for you, and you can't force that. And when a client doesn't have empathy for the team, and the team is then struggling to build empathy for the client, but the leader, the project leader, the team leader, the project manager, doesn't matter what, who it is working very hard to build that empathy and to relay that empathy back to the team. And have you run across that? Have you had success with that?
So what is your role? Are you more in the PM space? Okay. So I think two things. I think when people struggle to have empathy with us, it's because we're not sharing enough of ourselves. So, for instance, I went to my cousin's wedding, and I was talking to my client about it. I'm going to this wedding in Sioux City, Iowa, destination wedding. And I slapped her a picture of, I have this picture of the bride and me and the groom, like, isn't the dress pretty? And said, I'm a human, making myself a human by sharing myself with her. Obviously in a work-appropriate way, but I think that's the first thing. If people don't have empathy with, if clients don't have empathy with your developers, I think the developers getting on a call and even saying, this was a really tough problem for me to solve. And I tried this thing and I tried this thing and I solved it. And I was so excited to solve it, and I'm really excited to share with you my solution on this call. And then it's like, oh, you're a person who solves complicated problems that you've never solved before all the time. That's hard, right? And understanding how long it's going to take you to do that before you do it, asking them to estimate is hard. And the more that we can humanize that experience, I think is really helpful. And then back to the clients, I think having those sort of conversations with the team, what else do you think this client is juggling?
That's the struggle. Like in a particular instance that
Yeah.
this idea came to mind when you were talking about empathy. The struggle is that the client's team is working 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Yeah.
And we're not going to. Right?
They are working 70 hours a week. They are being our client, but they are also, ask your client, if you have a sidebar with them, hey, can you tell me, what are your top 5 responsibilities this week outside of this project? They're doing this, and they're also planning this event, and they're also, doing this other thing, and they're working 70-hour weeks. Even just reminding your team of that. When's the last time you worked a 70-hour week, guys? Like, what was your experience? How did you do your laundry, And just getting in that space, I think, is really valuable. And I think also it's really important, it's really easy to get to, us versus them, especially if there starts to be a little tension with the client team, and there can become this sort of us versus them discussion that happens before or after the call. Like, we have to deal with this client again. She's always this way.
Like,
She,
do you have access to my drawer?
Why is she always this way? And the second you start doing that around the calls with them, the more often it's just going to perpetuate that mentality. And so what I like to do, and this is a little different than building empathy, but I had a difficult client, and so we started watching 80s music videos, 90s music videos too before the client calls, because then the context of that client was like, oh my gosh, this time we're going to watch like Britney Spears, 90s music, and then it becomes this, and it takes 3 minutes to do. And so sort of shifting the context of the conversation, and even on the call, oh, I'm so blah, 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 blah. I hear this must be so frustrating for you. Yes, and then, and you can just sort of build that empathy in your conversation.
So
But-
you're building empathy through leadership, like I think that's like the takeaway there. Like
Yeah.
you said through the call, I understand this is frustrating for you, and being that way instead of being so focused, because developers get focused, project teams get focused driven,
Yeah.
right? My goal is to accomplish this thing. As a PM, my goal is to define the thing
Mhm.
and make sure you have the tools to accomplish
Yeah.
it. Great answer.
Yeah. Oh, they liked my answer too.
You mentioned nonverbal cues, which I thrived on when I was in office, but now I am remote as a PM.
Yeah.
Can you say more about how, besides asking people to have their videos, how do you make sure to see it all? 'Cause I struggle with how to conceal the little thumbnails and the people.
I mean, a separate monitor can be really good. I think, for me, the person that's talking should get big. It depends on the tool that you use, right? So Google, if I was presenting this on a Google Meet, I wouldn't see anybody, but something like Zoom lets you have the thumbnails, and what I do is I'll make the thumbnail, you can make it bigger, and then it will only show you one person sometimes, who's the person who's talking. But I think there's big things, right? People lean in if they don't understand. It's funny because I gave this demo session with my coworker as an audience member. When people are confused, they just, you're like, oh, that's confusion, and kind of get the basics of it down, and then ask. I think there might be a confusion. I think there might be a question, right? And then if you guess wrong, then you're learning sort of what you can see through the screen of their nonverbal cues. And I think it's really important to meet people in person if you can. And then once you've met in person, you can expand that out. But I can never do that over a phone call. I don't understand how people do it. It's so much easier to be on the same page. So hopefully that's helpful. We have a couple more minutes. We can close a little early. If there's no more questions. Going once, going twice. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.